I feel for you. I wish I could do something to help, but I have no idea.
I know it's just crazy because um I always this is usually where we get into issue every time. Okay, Facebook is on here. So what does it mean there's no permission? Okay, let's try this again. And if it doesn't, we'll just go ahead and do what we need to do, and then we can. Oh, it said
Yeah,
stop live stream. Am I on live stream already? It says stop live stream.
I think we are. It's
We
up at the
are?
top. It says Facebook. Since this meeting is being recorded.
This is a
We're
new
live.
one. This is a new one.
So one of those things where it was so easy you thought you made a mistake.
Because it told me that it's not doing it. So are you sure we are?
I am not at all. How? I guess I could go on Facebook and look.
I'm on Facebook. Let's see. I'm on Facebook. People are just gonna be like, Zulfat, don't quit it. We are on Facebook. And we'll be on for like 2 minutes.
Okay.
And I was
I'm not gonna quit
my
my day
third.
job. I will not quit my day job. I'm gonna stick to my day job. All right, good
Not going into
afternoon.
IT.
Yeah, I'm not gonna do IT because I'm not good at it. All right, everyone. Good afternoon. Again, my sincerest apologies for the technological mishap again. After 5, maybe now 6 years, I still have this every time I do this. I don't know why, but like I told everyone, I will not quit my day job. Thank you for joining us for another interesting budget conversations. This one is very critical because it's about our employees, the people that help us build the city, the people that help the city grow, that made the city what it is. And so I'm so excited to have some of the leaders of our unions with us this afternoon. We want to talk about the new Metro Employee Pay Plan. This is something that we haven't done in a long time. We've been talking about it forever. And finally, the new pay plan was presented to council this week. And so I wanted our leaders to, on behalf of their members, to give their feedback about this. Before we start our conversation, before I start talking to our leaders, I wanted to share some of the information on the pay plan in case some of you miss it, just to do a quick, very quick overview uh, of what was shared with council with us, and I hope you can see it. Based on HR presentation, this is the first time in a long time. I think the current form of pay plan that we have has been 1993. They added open range in 1997, and so now in 2023 we're doing a very comprehensive study of how the pay plan is and how to bring it up to market. One of the biggest change in the new plan is that step is now 15. I think originally we have it at 10 steps, meaning that the progression in your career, and then before when you get to 10, that's the end of it. You cannot go to the next one. With this new pay plan, there's now increase to where you can now go all the way to 15 steps. Now, according to the report, the new pay plan now makes sure that I think the increase, everyone will be getting an increase according to the new pay plan. In fact, let me share that from a slide back. It says everybody will get an increase, and the increase will be between 3 to 9% for everyone. So everyone gets something. My understanding is that if you are currently in the low range, you're in the very low pay grade, then you will see a very big increase. If you're already at the very top of the range, then your increase may not be as much. So for people making very low, then their pay increase could be as much as 9%. For people that are already high paying executive or making a lot of money, their money will be about 3%. Also, the new pay plan ensures that everybody across board, no matter what, gets a 2% step increase. And this 2% step increase will be something that will be happening every year. And so when you look at that step increase, so one, the range increases. Two, a 2% step increase for everyone, regardless of the step, increase of step to 15. And so when you look at standard range, I'm looking at what was presented here. Everybody gets between 3%, and the highest in that range will now be 10%. So if you're in step one before, you'll be getting a total of a 10% increase, and it goes down with that. And that is for everybody, including that is not in a special pay grade. So the next one is the fire and police department. And so for their increase, we're seeing something between 4% and 9%. And so remember that I said the range was from 1 to 10 before. And so now that is 1 to 15. That's why you're seeing step 10 and step 11 and step 12, because what's now happening is that people are now moving to the very next step. And then for labor and union, which is where I think I'll come back to this one. I want to share for open range. So for open range, it will be again between 3 and 9% is what is being proposed. And because open range does not have step, I think HR just devised a way to be able to move them in and out. And so that was the basis of the presentation. I think the other thing that was said was that they also tried to avoid a situation where, oh, I don't want to go into that one yet. They also avoid a situation where people are slotting, and so when you move somebody to one step, it bumps the people in the step already. So what they do this time around was make sure that everybody stays in their step, but there's another level to the step. And so that way it doesn't bump, and it ensures that everybody gets what they need to get. So that is a summary. If you want the full presentation, it will be on the Metro network. This was presented to the Metro budget working session this past week. And so actually this week. And so people can go and see it. The information is online, the presentation is online, and you can listen to all of that. So, but I wanted to talk to our trade leaders to be able to see, since you represent a lot of our employees, and this is the one with the union, according to this pay plan that says, okay, for our union members, we're going to see an increase between 5% to about 12.8%. So that is where we will start our conversation. We will try and talk about some other things. But for now, again, I want to thank you all for joining, for making the time this Saturday. And so if you all would introduce yourself. And my first question to all of you is, what was your members' reaction to this pay plan? Is it positive, negative, mix? And I'm going to start with Ms. Jessica. If you will introduce yourself, tell us the union that you represent, and then what is your members' response to this pay plan. I will stop sharing this for a minute.
Mhm. Yes, so my name is Jessica Stewart, and I'm president of SEIU Local 205, representing basically general government employees who aren't police or fire. Our members are, it's kind of mixed. There's some good things that they're excited about, but there's also some concerns with some of the changes. So it's a bit of a mixed bag for my folks.
Okay. All right, we'll get into what those specifically are. Ethan, Mr. Link.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having us, Council Lady. And I just want to clarify real quickly, in my specific union, um, we don't represent any public employees. The reason that I think I'm invited on here is on account of being on the Civil Service Commission, which helps to design and implement the pay plan, or propose it at least to council, and then oversee its implementation. So that's my role. My union represents construction workers primarily and service employees at Vanderbilt University. So the other thing that is important to, I think, all working people is that Metro is the one of the largest employers in Davidson County, and Vanderbilt is very closely one of the rivals there
Mhm.
in number of employees.
Mhm.
And so what happens at Metro is important to think about. Doesn't just impact Metro employees, but it actually sets a really broad and important standard in this whole labor market among large institutions, even, not just with government, but in the private sector, in the university sector, in the uh, large service building service sector. So Metro's pay and Metro's benefits are part of the local economy in a way that is external to Metro employees' experience.
Thank you. Thank you for bringing that perspective. And I think it will come in as we started talking about the rationale or how we designed this pay plan and what we were looking at, and how private employers played a part in what we're looking at here. So thank you. And I also will also want to hear your perspective as we continue to speak as somebody who's in the Civil Service Commission as to what your thought is about this somewhere down the road. So, but thank you for joining. So Miss Paula, how are you?
I am doing great. I hope you all can hear me okay. I am Paula Pendergrass. I am the president of the Metropolitan Nashville Education Association, better known as the Educators Union, the Teachers Union. And as educators are looking at this plan, I would say that they're concerned about how does this plan affect them as educators, because we realized, particularly a few years ago, that we did not, as educators, get the same COLA as Metro government. And so as we look at this plan, and it specifically talks about Metro government, how does this plan affect educators? When one of the key findings that came out of the survey that we did was that the cost of living in Nashville is a major barrier in helping us to retain educators. So we're concerned about the percent and the COLA that educators will get, and concerned about the cost of living increase, the cost of insurance, and just wanting to know how do educators fit into this plan that has been proposed.
Mm. All righty. Well, thank you. Thank you. So now I want to go back to so for educators, you don't see that, so you don't see that's positive, negative mix, but you're just saying how does this impact us? How do we make sure that we get basically the same thing that Metro is getting? Uh
Well,
uh uh
yeah, absolutely. Because one, um, it has been communicated that there's a possibility of a 3% COLA. And then, of course, it was mentioned about the $2,000 bonus that was coming from the voucher plan. But when you look at the fact that the insurance is going up, a 3% really just kind of keep educators where they are. And then we also have many educators who are not even going to receive a step increase because they're at the top of the pay structure. So even though they may receive a 3% COLA, they're not going to get a step based off the current structures that we have in MSPS. So there is concerns that they're pretty much are going to be where remains where they are, and even some even making less than they did the year before, even with a 3% COLA, because of everything else is going up. Food is going up, taxes, everything is going up, but their income is not.
okay. All right, we'll get back to the school because you are a very special need. So let's use this time to talk about the Metro employees that are directly impacted by this, and then we can segue back into our educators, which is going to be on MMPA side actually, but a very good conversation to have nonetheless. So Miss Jessica, let me ask you. You indicated that your members' response is mixed.
Mhm.
You tell me why. What are the positive that they see about this? What are the negative that they see about it?
Sure. So obviously, we're thrilled that it's bringing the bottom up and getting people to median sooner. Very happy, like you talked about the slotting. We've reverse slotting, how they've done it in the past, has helped bring about this pay inequity that we are now looking at. And so, doing away with the reverse slotting has made the employees very happy. Concerns are around CPI and ECI, replacing CPI with ECI, um, concerns around how the pay plan adjustments, like doing away with COLA, going to an across the board instead, and how that's going to be implemented going forward. And then just there are concerns about just the overall process in general.
Hmm. All right. Thank you. So before I ask you, and you mentioned about the ECI and the CPI, before we go
Mhm.
to that, I wanted to ask Ethan. Ethan, since you're in the Civil Service Commission, and you were part of the group that first heard about this, approved this, and all of that, and I know that there's some change between what you approve and what we're looking at now. We'll get to that in a bit. What is your take as somebody you're involved with? I know you represent private sector workers, but you've been in this labor conversation as far as you're in every meeting that I go with everybody. So I actually thought you were part of CLC, but again, so what is your take on this plan when you first heard it generally?
Well, I think the two important things to think about when with this change is you're right that it has been a long time since we had a overhaul to the Metro pay plan broadly, and because of that, this was not just something that people did on Chat GPT. They had to spend a lot of research time and they spent a lot of resources actually to perform this pay study. And so the council, and you'll remember in the last budget, approved, I believe it was around $1 million to um, go into a process of analyzing this budget, analyzing how our pay uh, structure would um, would compete in the market. And because of that, we can't expect there to be another kind of survey and another kind of study of this range and this magnitude
Hmm.
done for some period of time in the future. So what we approve now is not just what we're used to being the 1 year pay plan. This is this pay plan is more like a 20-year pay plan. And so we have to consider that those changes, while there might be some changes that really impact people positively in year one, that this is a 15-year pay plan for most people. So that's one piece of context I think that's important. Another piece is because of that, Metro employees when they join Metro, uh, yeah, I know this is true of a lot of Metro employees I know. They sit down and they study this pay plan very carefully. They are very educated about how it works because it's it's how they set their home budget. And they don't just do that year to year. They sit down and they look at the step system and they make decisions about whether they're going to buy a house, whether they're going to have another child, whether they're going to stay in the county, in fact, or move, have to move, or move further outside from where their office is or where their job site is. And so they make long term decisions based on these and weighty decisions, life changing decisions based on what happens in these pay plans. And so I think there's gravity not only to the impacts that people are going to feel, but also to the near permanence that some of these changes will make. So
Hmm.
it's just something that I think that the council is used to having important and sometimes difficult discussions about employee pay in the budget.
Hmm.
This year, it's a monumental discussion. So
mm,
thank you
mm,
for inviting us to talk about that.
mm. Thank you, thank you, Ethan, for that perspective. I think it's very critical. So I wanted to, Miss Paula, I wanted to come back to you. One of the things that you had mentioned about the concern that your members have about this is on the ECI CPI. I wanted to share this slide from the presentation, and I wanted us to talk about that in terms of what was presented. And let's see if I can get to it. If you give me 1 second, again, this is me trying to be technologically savvy, and I'm not.
You're doing great.
Thank you. So this is the slide that was shared at the meeting, and when you look at it, let me see if I can make it bigger. When you look at this particular slide, based on the presentation to council, it says that historically, ECI often has a better percent increase than CPI. And so my understanding is that when they use ACI, and if I understand correctly, the CPI is based on cost of living. The ECI is based on cost of labor. And so the project was saying that, look, we use the cost of labor because when we went back and look at this for the last about 20 years, overall, there's some years where CPI is better than ECI, some years, but almost every time, like in 2020 or 2021, CPI was better. In 2022, CPI was better. But other than those years, most of the time, the ECI is better. And so shouldn't we be using the ECI, or is there any other reason why your members feel like CPI should still be the basis for calculation? And Ethan can jump
Muted,
in.
Paula.
Oh, no. Did I say Paula or Miss Jessica? Jessica.
Oh,
Oh,
okay.
Hey, Jessica. Sorry, Jessica.
that's okay. That's okay. Yeah, the concern has been around, um, is it better to measure the actual cost of living in a place, or is it better to measure what other people are paying folks for the same work? And our members are concerned that measuring what other places pay for the same work could lead to an artificial suppression of wages. So if everyone decides that, janitorial work is only worth X amount, no matter what the cost of living is in the city, then that's what it'll be. And I agree with you. It has been charting as better for most of the time period, but that's not a guarantee. I will say the thing our members are more concerned about, whether it's ECI or CPI, is are is the administration going to stick to the metric that they choose, which past and even this year has shown us they don't. So even though using their own chart, ECI is at 4.1%, that's not what's being offered to employees in the budget. So that is the bigger concern, is that we pick a metric that not only is indicative of what employees face in their day-to-day lives and having to make those kind of decisions that Ethan talked about, but also that we stick to that if that is what the measurement says it should be, that is what employees actually get.
Wow. All right. That creates another question. But before I go to that question, I want to go to Ethan. As somebody who represents workers in the private sector, um, cost of labor, when you're looking at that, we'll be looking at all employers, including the private and public sectors. One of my concern or one of my question during the meeting was, we know that Tennessee is an employer state. Our state law favors employers more than it favors employees. We know that we're one of the states who has not increased our what is that, the minimum wage in 100 years, right? And so even though if we're using labor, are we taking into the fact that even when people make this money, it's not enough for them to live in Nashville? Like, I mean, yes, this is the wage that is paid everywhere else, but is it enough to cover what we need to sustain our living in this city? Was this part of the conversation? And I they did have an answer for me during the meeting. I think what um was said during the meeting to me was that, look, ECI is a better calculation, but the Metro Council, if you think that that's still not enough, you can do something about it. If you think people are still not making it, that was the answer. But as somebody who works in the private sector and somebody who was part of this conversation and this robust work that you're aware of that went into this, what is your take on the CPI ECI calculation?
Absolutely. I mean, this was one of the most important topics of conversation, both on the commission and I think among Metro employees, because ECI, if you go back and you look at the previous commission meetings over the last 10 years, over the last around 5 years, we have been encountering ECI being suggested as a metric of measurement and have had actually this conversation year after year about the importance of maintaining CPI, if not as the primary metric, as one of the important metrics. And I think there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that CPI does um, measure the ability of Metro employees to live and thrive in the communities they serve. So it is true that in the private sector, say, if you work at an IT company or you work, you're able to work from home or you're able to commute, sparsely or whatever that situation is. Yes, your calculation of your income, your offered income should be probably closer to what the market pays for other people in that same condition. Public employees, Metro public servants are very different in that there's a great public interest and public good in them living in the communities that they serve.
Mm.
Not only a benefit to the employee who lives in Madison or lives downtown even or lives in Bellevue or Antioch, but it is a benefit to us, the public, to have those employees be part of our community and not outside of our community. It's better for our firefighters and our police and our teachers and our folks that work at Metro Water, our paraprofessionals, all these 911 operators. It's very important for all of them to have full uh, uh, participation in Metro Nashville. And one way to make sure they have that option is by paying them a living wage that allows them to afford this ever growing city. So that's one important reason to think about CPI always being part of this conversation.
Mm.
The
Mm.
other reason is that the the measurement of CPI, yes, it's true historically in the near past, over the what I would say the last large business cycle that our economy's been through. It's true that ECI has sometimes outpaced CPI. That is true in the economy that we've been living in the last 20 so years. But I don't think anybody this year in 2025 believes that we are living in a normal economy. Um, and so there is a lot of reason, at least I think most private employers would tell you, that you see in some of the layoffs that are happening in the private sector, people are anticipating the potential of a recession, and a recession that could impact us in all kinds of unforeseen ways. And one way that I think even Jerome Powell, the Fed secretary or the Fed chair, has loomed that there's possibility of stagflation, where both there is no growth in the economy and prices continue to be high. If that happens, then a system that primarily measures pay increases by what other private and public employers are paying will put us in a position where CPI could outpace ECI year over year for some period of time. That does not mean we should have a CPI only measurement. It doesn't mean that we should ignore what the ECI is, but it does mean that CPI belongs in the conversation about what employees here in Davidson County who are employees of metro government should make. And to completely exclude that as a factor really kind of puts blinders on to the lived reality of what those people might live through, especially if the economy pans out the way that we think it might over the next 4 to 5 years.
Wow. All right, Miss Paula, any thoughts on the conversation around CPIs and ECI?
Yeah, I would say that they both have their advantages but disadvantage. And no matter what we look at, to what my colleague was saying, is that we do have to consider all the things that people are experiencing, that workers are experiencing, the cost of living, the things that really truly impact them, being able to afford housing in the areas in which they're working. And so, looking at, CPI or ECI is like, okay, which one of those are going to allow our workers to really thrive in this economy? And so I would say that they both probably have some good things about them, but then also some things that would prevent workers from really thriving in the areas where they're working. So I think that we really need to consider that. Even going back to what Jessica was saying, it's like, if we're going to pick one, you stick with it. And if one is higher than the other, the next year you don't go back to the one that is lower. So we really want to look at a mechanism that is really, really going to allow our workers to thrive.
Wow. All right, to those of you that are online, if you have any question, feel free to put it in the chat. Thanks, Lillian, for joining. I appreciate you joining, and thanks for your kind words there. If people have questions, send it in. We'll be more than happy to take a look at that as we continue to talk about this conversation. So what I'm getting from this conversation is that, which is my thought exactly, is if we're looking at the cost of labor and we get to a year where the cost of labor, where the ECI percentage is lower than the CPI, then what do we do? Would there be an adjustment in those years to be able to catch up with it, knowing that the cost of living has become so much that the income or the wages is not covering it? Would there be adjustment to that? And I think that's a very good question. And so how do we make sure that as we approve the plan, there is a contingency in there that allow us to make sure that we are continuing to look at cost of living. Now, my understanding from the presentation is that cost of living is there somewhere. It's not the basic component of it, but at least most employers do look at cost of living to be able to determine the wages. So it is there indirectly, and so we want to make sure though that it's enough. That's what I'm hearing across board. And like I said during the presentation to council, after I asked that question, HR director all actually said that that's where the council comes in. That's where the mayor comes in. That's where if the ECI is low and we believe that it's not enough to protect our citizens, then we can do something about it. Now, for the year that we're looking at, for the result that we're looking at, ECI is higher. So now that we have my next question to all of you is now, so this is the ECI is 4.1%. And that includes a step increase across board of 2%, a merit step. I don't know, I always call them the same thing. 2% that everybody get for their step. And then there's an across board recommendation of 2%. Now, in the mayor's budget, we have the 2% increases across 2% step increases. I want to make sure I'm using the right word. And then we have 1% across board. So now, to everyone that is listening, my understanding is that this plan actually recommends every year to have that 2% increase, no matter your level. So people will get the 2%. What is being worked on or changed is the across board piece. And I believe that the study recommended a 2%, but in our budget, in the mayor's proposed budget, it's only 1%. So that's where that difference of 3 and 4 is coming in. So let me ask you this, and I want to play the devil's advocate here. Because everything that we do in this city is also supporting our employees. When we put money either for fire, when we put money to our schools, when we do our roads, it's for our employees also. So it's for the benefit of everyone in the county, including the people that we serve, and we want them to have better roads. So in a year where we're trying to figure out what to do, and I'm looking at this, it's already saying that people will get between 3% and 9%, in some cases 12% for some union members. Why do we need to add that 1%? And again, please do know that in all my years on council, I've always supported the workers. And so I've never voted against the workers. I continue to be a voice for the workers. But if we're having a conversation and we want to be objective and we want to put every voice in the conversation, right? It cannot just be everyone saying the same thing. There are people that felt like 3 to 9 or 3 to 12 is a big bump. So what do you also to that? And I'll start with Miss Jessica, then I'll go to Miss Paula, and then I'll go to Ethan.
So yeah, no one, I don't think anyone is trying to say like we don't want any of these races, right? That's not the case. But there's a couple of things that stands out to me and that I'm hearing from my members. One is if we go back and look at how raises have been handled historically for Metro employees, I mean, there were a lot of years where there were very low raises or no raises. And that has helped to get us to the place we are now, where Mercer came in and said, basically, you got to lift all of these pay grades up because they are lower than they should be. And part of that, and I've voiced this to at the council, and I've voiced this in other places. Part of that is because of the way we've handled how we do cost of living adjustments and how we do pay raises, because it does get put in this cycle of the administration brings something to the Civil Service Commission. The Civil Service Commission votes on a recommendation, and then it has to go back to the mayor to decide whether or not to fund that recommendation. And then it goes to the council to, if the funding isn't where it should be or people think it needs to be, the council has to fix it. And that process it's cumbersome, right? And it is a bit demoralizing for the employees. That the employees have to, instead of being able to depend on their employer to make a recommendation, and then once the recommendation is voted on to fund the recommendation, the employees themselves have to go and ask the council to fix any problems. That is hard on them, right? That process. So that's an issue. But then also, we're super grateful that the bottom is getting raised, that people are going to be making more money. But when you look at that scale and you get about midway up that scale, those folks aren't getting 8, 9, 10%. And then once you get to the very top, because we've got a lot of metro workers who've worked here well past 15 years, right? And they won't get any more steps. They don't get any more 2%. So all they will get is whatever that COLA is. So that's an additional reason why it's important to add that 1% back in. Otherwise, those folks will only be getting a 1% across the board.
Miss Paula.
Here, can you hear me? Make
We
sure
can hear you. We can hear you.
all right. That 1% is very, very important to what Jessica said. I don't know anyone who would not want it, but just some more information like to that. When we think about just inflation and we think about years where there have been like a low inflation, right? For educators to thrive, you would have needed to increase their cost of living anywhere from like 3.5 to 4.5%. So if we're looking at an economy where there is just a high in inflation year, in order for an educator to thrive, we're looking at anywhere from 6 to 8% COLA. And so if we're even anywhere in between there, we're thinking about maybe a 5% COLA if we truly want educators to thrive. And that's important when we think about houses, rent, childcare, healthcare, and even retention, just the morale. We've heard hearing from educators that there's stress because when it's harder for us to recruit educators, we're seeing class sizes go up. Where the maximum class size may be, well, let's say the minimum 25, and you can get up to 30, we're seeing that number rise. And when we see that number rise, it's more on educators. It's a lot on educators. We're even hearing, just from students about their their 504s and their IEPs being met or not being met because of the high just role that teachers have, everything that they have to do that is impacting our students. So that 1% is very important when we say that we want to continue to recruit educators, because if we have a qualified, certified educator in every classroom, then we know that that is going to allow our students to thrive as well. So that 1% is extremely important. If we could get up to 4%, I know right now it's 3% on the table, but we can get up to that 4%, it would be highly appreciated, just because they really do need to thrive, because it does impact, it directly impacts our students.
Wow. Before I go to Ethan, I do want to make a clarification. I think that everyone will get the 3%. Everyone will get the 3%. So for people that are at the top of the scale right now, that are on range 10, because we've expanded the range to 15, they will technically be going to 11. And so they still have about another 4 years before they max out. So, but FY26 budget that we're looking at, everyone will get that 2% and then the 1 or 2%. So I wanted to make that clarification because we're not putting them straight at the 15 yet. So we're just going to start from 10. The next batch will be 11 or 12. Is my understanding from the way that I read that. So, but still, I think what Miss Jessica said and both of you said that resonated with me so much was the fact that we have not done this well in so many years that we're so behind. So even though we're looking at a 12%, it looked 12% this year. And the reason is because it has been lagging in previous years. If we had been catching it up, we would not have had such a wide gap this year. And so it's not really a favor bringing people up to 12% when in the last 2, 3 years, basically they've been lower than they should be. it's what resonated with me. And so looking at it as, oh, somebody's going to get a 12%, it looked like that, but if they've been getting it I think this council and the last council, the one that I've been in, I've tried to do the best that we can, considering COVID and everything else that we have to deal with, our tax stuff, our controller coming. I think we've always put employer first in that, and I'm sure every council feel the same. So it was not because we don't value our employees, we do. It's just because of juggling so many priorities, but. I get it that we're not doing anything special by bringing it up. We're only correcting what the deficiency from prior years. And so that's a very good way to look at it. Ethan, what is your take on that? You were part of the civil service where the 4.1 was recommended. What is your take on the fact that we're only doing 3%, which is the 2% raises and the 1% across board? At least proposed 3%.
Well, first thing I want to do is echo exactly what you said, which is we have had, I do believe, an extraordinarily strong council, not just in the sheer numbers of supporters of workers who are on the council, but also the leadership of the council members like yourself and like Chairman Porterfield, who have led in really important times when things weren't always easy and they had to make tough choices. And when they've made those tough choices, they have always included the perspective of the worker and the specifically the metro employee in that mix of important decisions. They have not ignored them. This council and the previous council have shown leadership on making sure that that happens. So it could be a lot worse, and things could be further behind than they were to the point that we came to this pay study. And the other thing I wanted to point out, though, is that it hasn't always been this way.
Mm.
Before this council and before the last council, really starting in the '08 recession, when steps were frozen and when layoffs were happening and pay for and kind of freezes on hiring were happening, a lot of things got really fractured in terms of trust. And then when there was a uh, shortfall in the budget back under a previous administration, and we chose not to give employees important raises that year and really kind of froze people's pay, um, it felt like a betrayal to Metro employees.
Mm.
And we didn't fulfill the multi-year pay plan that was enacted by the council. And that was an important moment. But before that moment, we had a tradition of passing multi-year pay plans that guaranteed workers cost of living adjustments over typically 3 years. And when we did that, those employee raises might not have always been as high as the CPI. They may have been sometimes a little lower than the CPI. But what it did create was stability. It created predictability for both the employee and the council and the Department of Finance to be able to consider long-term planning.
Mm.
And it gave us all a sense of stability that ever since we got away from multi-year pay plans, we have suffered from because every year we have to have this difficult discussion and we have to set the COLA every single year based on the topic of not considering everything that's gone on that previous 5 years, but sometimes just what's happened in the last couple of months.
Mm.
And so that's not a fair way for people to assess what the right way to pay employees over a 15 or 20-year period is. It's not fair to load all the considerations that need to be taken into account for that into a couple of months discussion. And so getting back to the way we used to do pay plans, which was multi-year pay plans that took into consideration all of these factors that had both a longevity pay component as well as a cost of living consideration. And yes, we could consider the cost of labor relative to Metro as part of that mix. But that's what really, and I think this pay plan helps to get towards that goal of going back to a multi-year component. Because I think that would help us get that stability. But we have to get the council's consideration of how this affects folks, lived experience this year as well as the next 5 to 10 years. And getting back to multi-year pay plans and multi-year COLAs helps us get that to be a reality. So I just hope that that's something in the future that the council will build off of in this pay plan. Because it's not, this is a conversation, I guess, that is not over, is the way I would put it.
Mm. Would you, I know that when you talk about this study that we haven't done in a long time, one of the things you said in the beginning was that this is a plan that would impact people for 15, 20 years, in your opening. So is this something that, do you know, as part of the Civil Service Commission, that will be updated on a regular basis? Do you know what the process is for that? Was that discussed? Uh, 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 um, I know that one of the things that was suggested is there will be 2% merit raises every year going forward. And I think that speaks to that reliability and people's ability to be able to plan what their check is going to be, what they're going to spend. At least we know the 2% is guaranteed. The across board is what we will be arguing about every year, whether it's based on CPI or ECI, what that number needs to be. The across board is the only thing that's going to be changing, but the 2% stays at least for the next 5 years for everybody as we get to step 15. So what is your thoughts on that, and do you know how often that will be done?
I think it's a great idea that the step system was preserved and extended into 15 years. I think that's really that's a helpful component. I think also the market adjustments that are in this pay plan do, as you pointed out, impact some of the lowest paid folks in our metro government. And specifically, I think the trades and labor categories, which that you can imagine, these are the folks that are doing very physical work in the in the trades of how we have general services in our buildings to function, how we have maintenance on our buildings to function, our electrical work, our plumbing, everything that isn't done by a contractor, but it actually involves metro maintenance. There's some significant upgrades there to match what the market is in the metro trades and labor market right now. So that's there's some definite people that are going to make have a much better life and one that matches the market, so that Metro can afford to get the best employee participation. And we've had a lot of folks applying for Metro employee positions in some of those categories. So Metro is a good employer, and it is helping to have some of those market adjustments, so that on balance this year there are some really important enhancements. As you get further and further into the years, the question will be how we use the new metrics that are introduced by HR to recommend a COLA, what's now being called across the board. If we are going to get the presentation that we expect, that presentation will exclude some of the CPI numbers that we would like to see, but that will be part of the discussion at the commission, because it's not just what's presented that can be discussed. We can always discuss those other factors, right? And we will. So it just won't be fundamentally baked into the first proposal. So the Civil Service Commission will continue to have the opportunity to shape the future annual pay plans. And then the council will have their final say. And I think that the council will continue to have that important responsibility to do their own research and do their own due diligence to consider the factors that they are hearing from their constituents and their metro employees that live in their districts uh, and that make their communities what they are. I think they'll have to continue to do that work annually. Um, and I guess what I'm advocating for, and what I really hope happens, is that someday in the future, that we will go to a situation where we'll have multi-year COLAs or across the board, or whatever you'd like to call them, that project those raises, thereby taking the pressure, the political and difficult community pressure off of the conversation, so that we can have a stable COLA that people can rely on over a 3-year period or a 4-year period or even a 5-year period, but probably not much longer than that. Um, that's a valuable way to make long-term planning decisions, not only with longevity pay, but also with the COLA. And that'll help council, that'll help everybody get a better product and a better considered circumstance. So I think that that's one valuable way we could move forward, is that council will have to do annual COLAs from now, and they will just have to think about whether they can do a multi-year COLA in the future.
Yeah.
I think one council did pass a resolution against multi-year
Yes.
pay plans, and that was, I think, short-sighted in that instance, because it was a reaction to a very specific economic or fiscal issue, and we made kind of a statement that locked us into the discussion we're in now, instead of saying let's do long-term planning. I think on balance, the Metro Pay Plan has really important upgrades for some Metro workers. And I think that it's going to be a step in the right direction for longevity pay. And the council is going to have that responsibility to take a look at it every year and consider what the economy is doing in real terms and how that impacts Metro employees.
Yeah, and let me, and thank you, Ethan. I do need to let you know that one of the reasons why council may have objected to long-term commitment is because part of the rule is that no council can bound or bind a future council to anything budget. So my council cannot say next year the next council has to pay 4% COLA. We cannot do that. Our budget is a 1-year document. It's from year to year. And because you don't know what the economy will bring, because you don't know what's going to happen, so there's nothing that would say. So when I say something, I remember this was very important when Oracle was coming, and I said 50% of the taxes that we collect from Oracle, we should put in affordable housing. It was a good thing. I put it as a resolution. It passed. But I have to put a caveat that if the money is there, because once you said you have to do X, Y, Z, then they don't. I mean, you cannot. We approve the budget on an annual basis. So I just wanted to make that clarification that even if we want to promise our employees we're going to do 4%, 5% every year, what if COVID happens? What if something happened? And I think that's why the disappointment comes when we're not able to live up to it because of those economic situation. I think what I agree, and I think what we're all saying though, is that I'm glad the 2% steps is there, but every year we have the responsibility to now look at what is the economy doing in real time and makes those adjustments. I hate that our members have to come and ask for it, but hopefully maybe HR does all of that, the Civil Service Commission does all of that, and make that recommendation annually on the front end so that all of that is taken into consideration. So I just wanted to not take enough for council. but just wanted to share some of the limitations that we have that doesn't allow us to project too far into the future. So this has been really great. Even enlightening for me, and to be able to hear your perspective, to be able to hear your responses, and that's going to inform some of the conversation that we will be having. I think a lot of things has come through this that explain a lot of things. I mean, look, we make decision, and like I said, some people think they get 12%, but when you're looking at that 12%, it's they've been making less all this time. So I wanted to ask if you all have any suggestion, comments, recommendations, last word, anything you wanted to add into this. And I'm going to start with Miss Paula. I'm going to then go to Ethan and then Miss Jessica as we try to wrap this up.
Yes. So I would just like to add, going back to the mayor's budget, and I know my colleague mentioned about longevity pay. That is definitely something that educators over the years have wanted MMPS to look at when it comes to paying educators, and the fact that we have about anywhere, I think about maybe 500 educators that are at the step where they're not going to get any type of step increase or any type of longevity pay. So looking really encouraging the council members as well as the mayor to continue to have conversations with MNPS leadership on what are they doing, what structures are they looking for when it comes to longevity pay for educators. And then also, and I know that you all have a very tough decision to make, and there's so many people that are relying on you all, so many different departments. And I know when you fund one, it's like you got to take away from somewhere else. But if there is any way possible that we could get that cost of living up to 4%, that would be highly appreciated to not only educators, support professionals, our workers, because of the housing and the healthcare and all the things that they're having to deal with, that cuts into that, where they feel like they're not necessarily getting an increase because of the expenses that are going out. So that would be an ask from educators.
Yes, and I know from MMPS, not only do we want to make you're saying that give it to the Metro employees, but make sure MMPS give it to our employees as well, right? So,
Yeah.
all right, Ethan.
Absolutely. I guess my kind of closing thought would be that, I do want to reiterate and consider that the metro government is both does not make this pay plan in a vacuum, and what this pay plan um, reform really kind of is aiming to do is fit metro into the market,
Mm,
so to make us compete with the market
mm,
in a way that I think is healthy to do
mm,
every so many years. But also we have to consider the fact that Metro is a participant in that market. It is a big participant in the local labor market. So when a Metro employee who is a janitor gets a pay increase, I can promise you that janitors at Vanderbilt University get a pay increase. I can promise you that Vanderbilt or that Metro employees or employees who clean large buildings downtown also get a pay increase. It is a market mover, this budget. And so it is a significant benefit to everyone for us to make sure that the dignity of that kind of work is um, baked into the market via one of the largest participants in that market here in Davidson County.
mm,
So just think about that everyone is considering the budget. Folks out there who are taxpayers who are thinking, what's in this for me? Well, what's in it for everybody is that you want your metro servants and employees to be living in the communities they serve because that's good for you. And B, Metro is a huge mover of this local labor market. like a lot of other large employers, the state of Tennessee, Vanderbilt University, HCA. These are large players in this labor market, and it will change the face of labor when it makes its decision. So thank you for considering the employee's position when we talk about these things, Council Lady.
Thank you. Miss Jessica.
Yeah, I'm really just gonna echo what both Paula and Ethan said, like about the longevity. I'm with Paula. So we also represent the support staff at MNPS. So I would love to see us be able to get both the Metro and the support staff COLA up to 4%. And then Ethan is spot on about how Metro is and should be a driver and an example of what a good employer is for the rest of the city. And I think you and the rest of the council have gone a long way towards making those promises reality. And I do want to take a moment to say I appreciate the hard work y'all have been doing on behalf of employees, and just to keep these things in the forefront of your mind as you're deliberating on what to do with this pay plan that's before you now, that these are employees and they are constituents and they are providing essential services to this city, and they are what makes this city so great, right? Like our Metro and MNPS employees are the heart and soul of this city, and we could not be the thriving, beautiful community that we are without them.
Mhm. Well said. I don't think I could say any better. Thank you all so much. I know that it's a Saturday, for giving up part of your Saturday to have this important conversation about the people that are actually keeping our city the way it is. I mean, it's an important conversation. One thing that I'm taking away from all of this also is that I'm grateful to Metro and HR for doing this study and getting us to where we need to be. But I do also agree that if the ECI, which we're going back, says 4%, if we make it 3%, then we will be behind what we think is the market value. And so I hope that we can make it the 4% so that we don't get back to trying to catch up, which is what we're doing this year, catching up many years, not my time, but even the time before me, where we've been able to freeze races and things like that. So we don't want to keep going back there. Ms. Jessica says something that was very moving and touching to me, that says that, you know, the process of the civil service recommending something and then employees feeling they have to go beg to get the recommended thing. It's not what we want, but I do want our employees to know that I know the mayor values all of you. As a council person, he did, and as a mayor, he does. The budget chair, Delisha Porterfield, was a union member. Always says she's a fighter for workers. Sometimes our hands are tied, not because we don't want to, but because of a lot of juggling things that we're juggling to do that. So we see it, we want to do it, and I think Chair Porterfield has already said if she can make it work, she's gonna make that 4% work. I can tell you that the extra 1% is going to go on my wish list. I'm going to be asking for that 10 million to make it 4%. We cannot guarantee anything again because we have to find the money. It's a balanced budget. If you're going to put money in something, you have to take it away from something else, unless you're going to increase taxes. And I don't think anybody wants the taxes increase. And so beyond what we have. So I think that's a conversation that we have. And if we want to increase everything, are we increasing taxes or what are we cutting? This is a conversation that is very tough for us to have, and it's not something that we take lightly. But I want to reiterate that we value our workers. We know how we get here. I personally don't want us to continue in that trend. I hope we can make our workers whole and back to what the market says, and continue to adjust and do that to show how much we value all of you, and we will do our best. If we're not able to, please do understand it is not and has never been because we think you all deserve less. If anything, I think you deserve a whole lot more than we're paying. And if we can even make it 5-6%, we will. But I just wanted to make that clear. Thank you also very much. Thank you to all our employees. Thank you to all of you for representing them, for your leadership. More than anything, thank you for joining me this afternoon. I appreciate you. To everyone else, thank you so much. My next I will not be having a budget conversation next Saturday because it's Eid. It's a Muslim holiday for us, and so I will be off next Saturday. The following Saturday I will be out of town, so I would not be doing it Saturday. I'll be doing Sunday instead, which will be June 14, I believe, or 15. I don't know which day. I think it's June 14 or 15, one or the other. That Sunday, I will be talking to Chair Porterfield. At that time, she will have a substitute budget, and we'll be talking about what is in our substitute budget. Hey, keep our fingers crossed. Maybe the 1% will be in there. So join me in 2 weeks with Chair Porterfield as we look at the substitute budget. This will go on my blog in a week or so. And if you subscribe to my newsletter, you should get the newsletter with all of this conversation. Again, everybody, thank you so very, very much. I appreciate each and every one of you. And I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your weekend. Thank you so much.
You too. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Lady.
Thank you.